I was restocking the walk-in freezer at the bakery when my phone rang. It was 2:07 p.m. on a Thursday. Cold air was biting into my fingertips, and the bread tray was half full when I saw the number. Unknown, Massachusetts area code. I answered out of instinct, not hope. "Is this Camille Hart?" I said yes, though my voice didn't sound like mine. "This is St. Joseph's Care Center. I'm sorry to inform you that your mother passed away an hour ago." The words didn't hit all at once. They landed slowly, like sleet on a windshield. Not loud, just dull. I didn't say much. Just okay, and thank you, like they'd informed me of a package delay. She'd been in that facility for 7 months. Early onset dementia. She used to be a piano teacher. Loved Debussy and strong coffee. By the time I got her in there, she couldn't remember my birthday or that I hated raisins and cookies. I walked out of the freezer, clocked out without a word, and sat in my car for 47 minutes. Didn't cry, didn't drive, just sat there with the engine off and my hands in my lap, staring at nothing, while my world quietly shifted without asking for permission. The next morning, I drove back to St. Joseph's. The air smelled like antiseptic and wet carpet. The receptionist smiled with that polite, practiced sympathy people use when they've said, "sorry for your loss," too many times to mean it anymore. She handed me a manila folder. I didn't even have to ask. Inside were 3 sheets of paper. One was the official death certificate, one was a final invoice from the care center, and the third was a notice about the transfer of remains. Balance due, $9,736.48, due within 5 business days. Otherwise, per state policy, my mother's body would be transferred to county services for cremation and disposal. No ceremony, no grave, no name. I reread that line 3 times. The administrator, a woman named Joyce, sat across from me with her hands folded. Her voice was soft, but firm. "We understand this is difficult, Camille, but we do have timelines we're legally required to follow. The county won't hold the remains past Wednesday." I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I didn't have the energy to disagree. She slid a pamphlet across the desk. Local funeral homes, budget options. The cheapest one still started at $6,500. That was for a pine box. No flowers, no viewing. I had $91.12 in my checking account. Joyce looked at me like she wanted to say more. Maybe she pitied me. Maybe she was grateful it wasn't her mother. I stood up before she could. When I was 8, my mom used to read to me every Tuesday night. Not fairy tales, not picture books, real stories. Steinbeck, Baldwin. Once she tried to kill a mockingbird, and I didn't understand half of it. But I remember her voice when she read Atticus's lines. Calm, measured, like the world made sense if she said it slowly enough. She taught English at a public middle school for almost 20 years. Never missed a day unless I had a fever or she did. She graded papers on the kitchen table, red pen in hand, always muttering under her breath about apostrophes. We weren't rich, not even close. But she made rent, made soup from scratch, and made every birthday feel like a parade, even when it was just the 2 of us. After her diagnosis, the books disappeared first. She couldn't finish a paragraph without forgetting where she started. I tried reading to her, like she used to with me, but she'd drift off halfway through. One night, I found her crying over a stack of library books she didn't remember checking out. That's when I knew I was losing her. Not all at once, but inch by inch. By the end, she couldn't remember my name. but I remember hers. Elizabeth Jean Hart. She deserved more than a number on a spreadsheet. That weekend, I made a list. 3 old college friends, 2 coworkers, and 1 distant aunt who used to send me birthday cards with glitter stickers. I wasn't asking for 10 grand. Just enough to get the funeral home to talk to me without checking my bank statement first. I started with the safest. Jenny, my shift lead at the bakery. I asked her during closing while wiping down the counters. She blinked, then softened. "Oh, Cam, I wish I could, but my rent just went up. You know how it is." I did. I told her it was okay. Then came Marcus. He replied to my text with a Venmo transfer, $20 and the note. "Hang in there." The others responded with polite versions of the same sentence. "I'm so sorry, I just can't right now." "If I could, I would. Wishing you strength." Even my aunt, who once mailed me $100 for finishing high school, said she was between things and hoped I found a way. By Sunday night, I'd raised a total of $45 and a handful of well-meaning emojis. I stared at the numbers in my bank app, then closed it. Not because I gave up, but because the world already had. It was just past midnight when I opened the browser. Not Chrome, not Safari. Something private. Incognito. Like shame needed its own software. I typed slowly, not because I didn't know what to say, but because once I typed it, it would exist. One night, no strings, first time, $10,000, cash only, serious inquiries. I stared at the screen for 27 minutes before pressing post. No name, no face, no backstory. Just a message buried deep in a forum that specialized in quiet transactions and mutual deniability. My hands were cold. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even thinking. Just watching the cursor blink like it was judging me. Part of me still believed no one would reply. That maybe this would be some sick catharsis, a scream into the void. But replies came, within minutes. Crude, transactional, vile. I almost deleted it. Then came one that stood out. Just a first name, a time, a place, and 2 words. Agreed, cash. No questions, no negotiations. My stomach turned, but I didn't delete it, because somewhere in that message, behind all the ugliness and disgust, was the thing I needed most: certainty. The lobby smelled like leather, polished wood, and air too clean to be real. It was the kind of hotel that didn't need to advertise. Everyone already knew. Quiet elegance, discreet service, valet parking, and soft jazz playing somewhere overhead. I shouldn't have belonged there, but nobody looked at me twice. My dress was borrowed black, simple, a little too tight at the ribs. My heels clicked louder than I wanted them to. My palms had been sweating since I got off the subway. The front desk clerk handed me a key card without blinking. "Room 1914, she said, like she did this 10 times a day. Maybe she did. The elevator was mirrored. I avoided my reflection. Somewhere between the 8th and 14th floor, I started to feel like I wasn't real anymore. Just a shape in a dress, a ghost in borrowed skin. When the elevator dinged, I stepped out into carpet so thick it muffled everything, even my doubt. The hallway was silent. Room 1914 was halfway down, on the left. I stood in front of the door for a full minute, keycard in hand, pulse in my ears. There was no knock, no second thoughts. Just one small click, and a door opening into something I couldn't unstep out of. He opened the door before I knocked. Tall, mid-30s, dark suit, no tie. The kind of face that didn't flinch. No smile. No curiosity. Just a man who already knew how this night would go. He stepped aside without a word, letting me in. The room was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioning. Curtains drawn. A bottle of water on the table. Nothing theatrical. Nothing seductive. On the bed, a black duffel bag. Closed. Neat. He pointed to the chair near the window. "ID," he said. I handed him my driver's license. My fingers brushed his. Cold. He checked it. Nodded. Reached for the bag. Unzipped it. Inside, cash. Stacks wrapped in bands. All hundreds. Neat. Like he'd done this before. Or didn't care enough to make a mess. He set the bag back on the bed and faced me. "No touching unless you initiate," he said flatly. "No marks. No names." I nodded. I wasn't sure if I was agreeing or just trying to get through it faster. He didn't undress like in movies. Slow, with music and tension. He took off his jacket, his watch, his shirt, like he was clocking out of work. Methodical, distant. There was no hunger in his eyes, no interest, just task. I stood there, frozen, every muscle clenched tight. And then I stepped toward him, because this wasn't about want, it was about done. He didn't touch me at first. He waited. It wasn't tenderness. It was protocol. Like he'd learned the rules of this kind of arrangement and followed them like a script. I moved first. Just enough for him to take it as permission. His hands were clinical. No hesitation, no exploration. Just mechanical. And then, without warning, he reached up and brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear. That was it. Just his fingertips against my temple. Gentle. Almost absent-minded. Something someone might do in a kitchen or before a first kiss. Not here. Not like this. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. Tears came fast. No build-up, no warning. Just a full-body collapse from the inside. I turned away, tried to hide it. Wiped my face with the back of my hand, but it was useless. The dam was gone. My chest shook. My throat closed. Years of silence cracked in one moment of unexpected softness. He froze. Didn't speak. Didn't move closer. Just watched. Expression unreadable. I hated that it was that touch. The smallest thing that undid me. Not the money, not the room, not even the sex. That. I pulled the sheet tighter around me. "I'm fine," I whispered, voice hoarse. But we both knew I wasn't. When it was over, he stood up, walked to the bed, and zipped the bag closed. No words, no second glance. He handed it to me like it weighed nothing, but in my hands, it was the heaviest thing I'd ever carried. I clutched it tight, still wrapped in the hotel robe, barely remembering how to move my legs. He didn't say goodbye, didn't ask if I was okay, just turned away, as if I'd never been there. I walked down the hallway barefoot, shoes in hand. The elevator ride felt endless. My reflection in the mirror looked older, washed out, faded. Outside, the air was cool, damp from a recent rain. I didn't call a cab. I didn't check my phone. I just walked, not knowing where, with a duffel bag full of cash and a silence that hummed louder than traffic. That night, I didn't shower. I didn't count the money. I didn't speak. I just sat on my mattress in the corner of my studio, staring at the ceiling, and tried to remember why I ever thought dignity had a price. The service was small, just me, the pastor, and a plot near the edge of Rose Hill Cemetery. I paid in cash. No one asked questions. There were no flowers, no music, just a pine casket and damp earth waiting to close over what was left. I wore my mother's church dress, the one she'd kept wrapped in plastic at the back of her closet, saving it for a Sunday that never came. I stood through the whole thing. No tears, no eulogy. I just whispered her name under my breath, once like it might land somewhere she could still hear it. Elizabeth Jean Hart. I placed a single lily on the lid, then watched them lower her down. The wind picked up as the last shovel of dirt fell. Not hard, just enough to carry a chill through my spine and down to my heels. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I inhaled. Not because anything was okay, but because it was done. 3 weeks later, I started a new temp assignment downtown. Administrative work, filing, data entry, answering phones. Nothing glamorous, but steady hours and decent pay. I needed that. The agency emailed me the onboarding packet and told me to show up Monday morning. No interview, no prep, just black slacks, clean shoes, and a smile. The company name didn't register at first. ArcLight Technologies, some mid-sized defense contractor, apparently doing big things with artificial intelligence and predictive systems. Government contracts, big buildings, men in suits. The morning I arrived, the lobby was marble and glass-tall ceilings, corporate art, a front desk that buzzed with quiet power. I signed in, took the elevator to the 27th floor, and followed the HR rep through a hallway lined with frosted glass offices. We stopped at a shared desk near the window. "This will be your station," she said. "Just for the next 2 weeks. You'll be shadowing the operations team." I nodded, still adjusting to the silence and the view. Then I turned and saw the nameplate on the door at the end of the corridor. D. Reeve, CEO. My chest tightened. I hadn't asked for his name that night. But now I knew it, and apparently I worked for him. It happened on the 3rd day. I was walking back from the break room, coffee in hand, trying to look like someone who belonged there. The hallway was quiet, one of those mid-morning lulls when even the air felt like it was waiting for something. He turned the corner without warning. Same suit, same stillness. But this time, in daylight, in public, Dane Reeve. He froze for half a beat. So did I. No words, no reaction. Just 2 people standing in a corporate corridor, pretending not to know what the other looked like in silence. His eyes landed on mine, unblinking, not surprised but alert, like a man who recognized a threat, or maybe just a memory he wasn't ready to face. He gave a slight nod. Not friendly, not dismissive, just acknowledgement. Then he stepped aside and walked past me. No confrontation, no shame, just the weight of everything unspoken tightening around my throat as I kept moving, as if nothing inside me had shifted. I made it back to my desk and sat down, heart pounding through my ribs. So this was it. This was what surviving looked like now. I told myself I'd just finish the 2-week assignment, keep my head down, and disappear. And I did keep my head down. Mostly. I filed reports, typed notes, refilled the printer tray before anyone asked. I smiled when spoken to and didn't speak unless necessary. It worked for a while. Then small things started to shift. On Monday, my desk was swapped with a newer one. No explanation. The keyboard didn't stick anymore. The monitor was wider. On Wednesday, I noticed my time card rate had changed. Not by much, but enough to make me blink. The agency confirmed it had come from ArcLight's end internal wage correction, they said. Then Friday came, and the operations lead handed me a new headset and said, "Courtesy of upstairs." She didn't name who. She didn't have to. No one else on my level got upgrades. No one else was shadowing managers or getting copied on upper-tier reports. It wasn't favoritism. It was quieter than that. Like someone had nudged the system just slightly in my favor enough to notice, not enough to prove. I didn't know what to make of it. It didn't feel like guilt. It didn't feel like protection. It felt like someone trying to fix something without admitting it was ever broken. That weekend, I sat on the edge of my bed with the pay stub in one hand and my old phone in the other. $12 more per hour, a better chair, a faster computer, a cleaner desk, all invisible strings being pulled by someone who hadn't said a single word since the night he bought me. Part of me wanted to quit, walk away before it turned into something I couldn't explain to myself. Because wasn't that what power looked like? Being helped without being asked, nudged without being told? I could already hear the voice in my head. You're still letting him own the story. But the other part, the tired, practical, ragged part, couldn't ignore the facts. I needed this job. I needed the routine, the structure, the paycheck that didn't bounce. And somewhere deep beneath the logic was something softer, more dangerous. The way he'd looked at me in the hallway. Not like I was leverage. Not like I was a mistake. But like he remembered everything, and wasn't ready to forget it. I hated that I noticed, and I hated that I didn't walk out that Friday, because maybe, in some small, broken corner of me, I wanted to be seen again. The following week, everything felt lighter. No sudden hallway run-ins, no unspoken glances. Just work. Just structure. Just normal. I learned the names of the people in my row. I brought my own mug from home. I stopped jumping whenever my phone buzzed. It felt strange, but real. Like life was folding itself back into something manageable. Even Dane stayed distant. Sometimes I'd see him across the floor in meetings, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. He didn't look at me, not once. And somehow, that gave me permission to pretend we'd never collided at all. For the first time in months, I fell asleep without replaying everything. No guilt, no heat, no weight on my chest. Just sleep. On Friday, I stayed late to finish a report. The office was nearly empty, the lights humming low. I felt calm, capable, whole in a quiet, private way. I remember thinking, maybe I could start over. Maybe this could just be mine. And then I heard it. 2 interns whispering by the copier. My name, followed by a laugh. I didn't turn around. I didn't move. But in that moment, I knew whatever I thought was buried was coming back. The email came Monday morning. Subject line, "You should see this." No message. Just a link. It was sent from a dummy account, untraceable. No reply. I hovered over it for a full minute before clicking. The screen opened to a blurry image. A hotel lobby. My face, turned just slightly to the side. A timestamp in the corner. My name typed out in full underneath. $10,000. One night. No strings. The caption punched the air out of me. It was the photo I never knew was taken. From the night everything started. I closed the tab, then opened it again. It was still there. Still me. I felt cold, like someone had dragged my insides out and hung them under fluorescent lights. By noon, it was spreading. Whispers by the water cooler. Sideways glances when I passed the break room. Even HR avoided my eyes. No one said it directly. No one needed to. The shame wasn't in the headline. It was in how quickly people filled in the blanks, with smirks, with silence, with slow head turns. By the time I got home, someone had messaged it to my personal account. No words, just a screenshot and a thumbs-up emoji. The thing I did to survive had become a punchline, and I wasn't sure if I could survive it again. By Tuesday, the office no longer felt like a place I belonged to. It was subtle at first. A pause too long in conversation, a smile that didn't reach the eyes, a colleague suddenly too busy to sit near me in meetings. Then it got sharper. Someone left an anonymous note on my desk. "Everyone's got a price. Yours was cheap." Typed. Printed. Folded once. I didn't cry. I just put it in the trash without blinking. At lunch, I sat alone, not because I wanted to, but because people moved when I joined their table, like I carried something contagious. When HR finally called me in, they used every polite word possible. "We're just checking in. Do you feel safe? This doesn't affect your role unless you feel it does." What they meant was, we won't fire you, but we also won't protect you. I nodded through it all, numb. Back at my desk, the silence around me felt louder than any scream. My keyboard sounded like gunshots. Every click echoing off the walls no one wanted to share with me anymore. By the time 5 o'clock hit, I couldn't remember a single thing I'd worked on. When I walked out of the building, it felt like everyone's eyes were peeling layers off my skin. Like I'd been exposed, catalogued, and left out in the open to rot. Not for what I did, but for who they decided I was. It was Wednesday morning when HR called again. Same room, same polite tone, different agenda. "Given everything, circulating," the woman said, not quite meeting my eyes. "We think it would be best for your well-being to take some personal time." Not "you're fired," not "you did something wrong," just a gentle pause. A pause that felt permanent. I wanted to ask why now. Why not when the photo first leaked? But I didn't, because I already knew. The gossip had gotten too loud, and I'd become inconvenient. They framed it as compassion. Rest, reflect, reset. But the message was clear. Disappear for a while, let the dust settle, come back less, visible. I walked out with a box of my things. Though I hadn't packed them. Someone had done it for me. That hurt more than the rumors. Outside, the city felt different. Brighter, but colder. Like the world had moved on while I was busy trying to stay still. I didn't know where to go. My apartment felt too small, my thoughts too loud. I turned off my phone, then turned it back on, checked my messages. Nothing from Dane. Not yet. Maybe that was for the best. Because part of me didn't want comfort. I wanted silence, even if it swallowed me. I waited for a message. A call, a knock on the door, anything. But nothing came. No explanation, no apology, not even a check-in from Dane, the man who'd once said I deserved better. Maybe that had just been guilt. Maybe I'd imagined all of it. I checked my inbox every hour, reread old texts, wondering if I'd missed something. All I found was silence. And silence, when it's sharp enough, starts to sound like rejection. So I packed. Not everything, just enough. 1 suitcase, a backpack. The rent was paid for the month, but the apartment already felt like it had stopped belonging to me. An old coworker had once offered me a couch in Chicago if I ever needed to get away. I didn't think she meant it, but I called her anyway. She answered, said yes without hesitation. That night I booked the cheapest one-way flight I could find. No plan, no next step, just away. As the plane climbed over the city, I looked down through the window, hoping stupidly that I'd see someone chasing the plane with a sign. Of course I didn't. Because when people walk away from you in silence, they don't plan on catching up. I left before sunrise. The streets were still asleep, the sidewalks damp with last night's rain. The city looked softer that way, less judgmental. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. There wasn't anyone left to say it to. The suitcase I dragged behind me was half empty. A few shirts, a pair of jeans, a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird that used to be my mother's. No makeup, no heels, nothing that reminded me of who I'd tried to be here. At the airport, I didn't cry. I thought I would. I kept waiting for it to hit me. But it didn't. I just stood there, clutching my boarding pass like it was some kind of absolution. When I reached the gate, I sat down, placed the suitcase in front of me, and unzipped it, just to check. Still empty. Still real. It felt symbolic, like I was carrying a shell of myself out of one life and into another. Not escaping, not healing, just moving. The flight was on time, the sky was clear. And as the engines roared to life, I closed my eyes and whispered to no one, "Don't follow me, not unless you mean it." Then I flew away. "Clara!" My roommate's voice cut through the hum of the kettle. "Turn on the TV. Now!" I padded into the living room, still half asleep, hair damp from a quick shower. She was already pointing. The screen showed Dane. Not just his face, his voice. Live. Press conference. Microphones. Reporters. He looked exhausted. Paler. Less polished than the man I remembered. And then I heard it. "My choices that night were transactional, yes," he said. "But hers weren't. Hers were survival. And that difference matters." I froze. My fingers curled into the sleeves of my sweater. He wasn't denying it. He was telling the world. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something flicker inside me. Not fear, not shame, just heat, like a match had been lit in the cold. The press conference had already been running for 10 minutes when Dane stepped forward. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, and the kind of look people usually reserve for funerals or courtrooms. But this wasn't either. This was something else. He waited until the room fell quiet. No notes, no teleprompter. Then he said, "I'm here to speak about someone who doesn't owe any of you a single explanation." The cameras shifted. Reporters leaned forward. "She didn't ask to be dragged into this. She didn't sign a contract. She made one impossible choice in a moment of grief, and the world has treated her like a scandal instead of a human being." Flashbulbs popped. No one interrupted. He went on, his voice steady but low. When my father died, I was handed a trust fund. When Clara's mother died, she was handed a bill. And the fact that we treat those two events as remotely equivalent is exactly why I'm standing here now. A murmur rippled through the room. She didn't seduce me. She didn't manipulate me. She didn't want anything except to bury her mother with dignity. And I gave her the money, thinking it would be a clean transaction. I was wrong. Because she wasn't just a decision, I carried her with me long after that night. Someone asked if he regretted it. He shook his head. I regret hiding. I regret being a coward. But I don't regret her. Silence. For 5 full seconds. Then a single clap, followed by another, and another. By the time he stepped off the stage, the headlines had already changed. ArcLight CEO breaks silence, defends scandal woman in powerful statement. I watched it all from a couch 300 miles away, and for the first time since I ran, I realized maybe I wasn't running anymore. Maybe I was being called back. He answered on the first ring. No hello, just my name, like a question, like a relief. Clara. I didn't ask how he was, didn't ask why he did it. I only asked one thing. Why did you answer my post? There was a pause. Then his voice, lower now, less rehearsed than the one at the press conference. My mother died in a rehab clinic in Phoenix, alone. I didn't even know she'd relapsed. I was too busy closing funding rounds, too busy being important. I stayed quiet. I got the call 3 days after they cremated her. No funeral, no flowers, just a file folder in the mail. That was it. I swallowed hard. He kept going. When I saw your post, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't about the money. Maybe it was the way you wrote it. Like it wasn't even about yourself. Just her. I kept thinking, if someone had cared enough to do that for my mother, maybe she wouldn't have died feeling disposable. Silence stretched between us, not heavy, just full. I didn't answer because I wanted you, he said finally. I answered because I couldn't stand the thought of you carrying that alone. I felt my chest tighten. He hadn't tried to save me. He'd been trying to make peace with his own ghosts. And somehow, in the middle of all that, he'd seen mine too. I sat by the window for a long time after we hung up. Outside, the street buzzed with late buses and low conversations. Nothing dramatic. Just life. Moving on. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was watching from behind a glass wall. I felt human. Not a scandal, not a secret, not someone's mistake. Just Clara. A woman who had made one impossible choice and still deserved dignity. It wasn't the press conference that changed things. It wasn't even his apology. It was that he spoke to me like I mattered, not as compensation, not out of guilt, but with truth. I didn't feel pitied. I felt equal. Maybe forgiveness doesn't always come with fireworks or closure. Maybe sometimes it just slips in the quiet, when you finally believe that maybe you weren't the one who was wrong. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to disappear. I wanted to be seen, on my terms. So I opened my suitcase again, folded the same clothes back in, and added something new. A pressed lily from my mother's funeral. Then I booked a ticket back to the city. Not for him. For me. I wasn't expecting to see him again. Not there. Not like that. It was a quiet Tuesday, and I needed a break from screens and silence, so I wandered into the corner bookstore near my sublet. It smelled like dust, coffee, and worn pages. My mother would have loved it. I was flipping through a worn copy of East of Eden when I felt someone stop across the aisle. I looked up. It was him. No suit, no press shadowing his steps. Just a dark blue hoodie and a copy of The Giving Tree in his hand. We didn't speak. He nodded once. A small gesture, like a breath held and released. I nodded back. He didn't approach. Neither did I. But we both lingered, two people caught in the gravity of something unfinished, something still warm. He set the book down, gently, like it mattered, then walked toward the register. I watched him pay, thank the clerk, and pause at the door. He glanced back only once, not as a question, as a permission, and in that second, I realized he wasn't chasing me anymore. He was waiting to be chosen. We ended up at a little cafe next door. Neither of us suggested it. It just happened. He ordered tea. I asked for hot chocolate, more out of habit than taste. The silence between us wasn't tense. It was fragile, like paper between candles. Then Dane said, "I shouldn't have let you walk away without a word." I looked at him, unsure if I was ready to answer that. He continued, "I thought keeping distance was protecting you, that if I didn't reach out, it would shield you from the storm. But really, I was just afraid." "Of what?" I asked quietly. "Of caring," he said. "Of how much I cared when I had no right to." That landed hard. He leaned back, eyes scanning the chipped edge of the table. "I grew up thinking everything had a cost. Love, loyalty, even grief. You don't show it unless it gives you leverage. And then you met me," I said. Flat. Not cruel, just true. He nodded. "I paid for one night and ended up haunted by everything you never asked me for." I looked away, blinking back something sharp. "I watched your video," he added. "The one after you came back. You looked free." "I was," I said. He looked at me then, not like a man asking for another chance, but like someone bracing for whatever came next. "I want to try," he said. "Not because I feel guilty, not because I'm lonely, but because even after everything, when I look at you, I don't see a mistake. I see the first time in my life I made a choice that wasn't about control." I let the silence settle. Then I said, "This time, I lead. No secrets, no rescues." He smiled. "No arguments." The check came. He didn't reach for it. I paid, because this time, we were on equal ground. We left the cafe without saying much. The rain had started while we were talking. Soft, steady. No thunder. No drama. Just water. Falling like it had all the time in the world. I didn't bring an umbrella. Neither did he. We walked side by side, jackets zipped, hands in our own pockets. I told him about my mother, how she used to correct my grammar mid-cry, how her laugh always came with a little wheeze at the end, how I still heard it, some nights when I wasn't trying to remember. He didn't interrupt. He didn't tell me she was proud, or that she'd forgive me for what I'd done. He just listened. That was new. When I finished, he nodded once, slowly, like the story settled somewhere in him, not just in his ears. We reached the crosswalk. The light changed, but we didn't move. I get why you did what you did, I said finally. But understanding something doesn't mean it stops hurting. I know, he said. And I'm not asking you to forget it. Just to let me earn the space to be more than that choice. I didn't answer, but I didn't walk away either. And maybe for now, that was enough. He offered to walk me home. I hesitated, then nodded. No hidden meaning, no invitation. Just company. The streets shimmered under the rain, reflections stretching like half-forgotten dreams. He kept a careful distance, close enough to share a moment, far enough not to break it. Outside my door, we paused. He didn't lean in, didn't ask for anything. He just looked at me, not through me, not around me, at me. And for the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't brace for manipulation or seduction or guilt. I just looked back. There was a softness in his eyes I hadn't noticed before. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe I was just finally ready to see it. "You're safe now," he said, barely above a whisper. I didn't reply. I just smiled, small but real. And when I turned to unlock the door, his reflection stayed in the window glass. Not as a ghost from my past, but as someone I might finally learn how to trust. It started with a headline, then a blurry photo. Then came the think pieces, the anonymous sources, the podcast speculations. They called me a social climber, a manipulator, a PR nightmare. Some framed it like a second-chance romance. Most didn't bother with romance at all. Just scandal. One article even claimed I'd planned the whole thing, that the viral pain, the vanishing act, the bookstore meeting had all been staged. Like I was that calculating, like grief could ever be rehearsed. They dug through old posts, found classmates who barely knew me, spun quotes into weapons. Even my non-profit work wasn't safe. One tabloid ran a piece titled, "From Bedroom to Boardroom, The Redemption Facade." Dane didn't respond publicly, but inside Arclight, I saw the tension. Board members whispering behind closed doors, investors raising eyebrows, whispers of optics, reputation management, containment. We weren't a scandal anymore. We were a liability. And the worst part? The way people looked at me again, not with disgust this time, but with pity. Like I was too naive to see I was just another story waiting to be spun. I filmed the video on a Thursday morning. No makeup, no lighting, just me, sitting by the window in an old hoodie. I didn't rehearse. I didn't even write anything down. I just pressed record and spoke. If you're watching this, you've probably already made up your mind about me. That's fine. I'm not here to change anyone's mind. I'm here because I'm tired of being spoken for. I paused. Not for drama, just to breathe. Yes, I did what they say I did. I sold something I didn't think anyone would want. Not because I lacked values, but because the world told me my value was negotiable. My mom was dying. She was in pain. And no one, no charity, no agency, no system stepped in. So I did. I looked straight into the lens. And then I met someone who saw that choice and didn't turn away. He didn't save me. He didn't owe me anything. But he listened. Another pause. And now, people are asking if I deserve what I have, if I'm manipulating him, if I'm using a story to stay relevant. Well, here's the truth. I didn't ask to be relevant. I asked to bury my mother with dignity. That's it. The light shifted on my face. I didn't move. Every woman I know has made choices she's judged for. This just happens to be mine. I'm not ashamed, and if that makes me dangerous to your narrative, then fine. I leaned forward. But you don't get to rewrite me. I lived this. I survived this. And I won't disappear so it's easier for you to forget. I ended with a single sentence. My name is Clara Hayes, and I will not be your cautionary tale. Click. Upload. No filter. No comments allowed. But within hours, the internet was burning, and for once, I wasn't afraid of the flames. It started small. A message from a nurse in Detroit. I watched your video at 3 a.m. on my break. I cried. Thank you for saying what I never could. Then another from a woman in Atlanta, single mom of 2. Your story reminded me I'm not weak for doing what I had to do. Emails, DMs, letters. Some just said thank you. Others were full of pain, survival, fierce resilience. None of them judged me. For every cruel tweet, there were 3 quiet voices whispering, "Me too." The press couldn't ignore it. Podcasts shifted tone. A journalist called it the redemption of Clara Hayes. Another labeled it a rare moment of public grace. I didn't smile, but I breathed easier. For the first time, I felt seen without being dissected. Not a scandal, not a symbol, just Clara. And in the quiet hum of that moment, I realized something. Maybe I hadn't just survived the story. Maybe I had taken it back. I started keeping them in a shoebox, not out of sentiment, but because I didn't know what else to do. Some came handwritten, trembling cursive on lined notebook paper. Others were printed, typed, folded carefully like secrets. A teacher in Ohio, a teenager in New Mexico, a grandmother in Queens who had never told anyone what she did in 1976 to pay rent. They didn't praise me. They just told me their truths, raw, unfiltered, brave. And in their words, I found a mirror. A different kind of strength. Not the kind that stands tall in the storm, but the kind that whispers, "You're not alone," when the wind won't stop howling. Reading those letters, I stopped asking if I deserved peace. I started believing I could give it, not just to myself, but to others, too. One woman ended her note with just 5 words. You helped me forgive myself. That one I kept on my desk, folded flat, but never closed. I used to count headlines. How many stories used my name? How many words they twisted? How many nights I lost to the noise? Now I count something else. 10 weeks, 2 days. That's how far along I am. The nausea comes in waves. The cravings are strange. I cry during commercials and fall asleep before dinner. But I've never felt more alive. I sit by the window some mornings, hands resting lightly on my stomach, and listen to the quiet. Not silence, just peace. Dane doesn't say much these days, but he brings me ginger tea without asking. He reads articles about prenatal care like he's cramming for an exam. Sometimes we talk about names. Other times, we don't talk at all. Just sit in the soft, knowing that something new is coming. Not because we deserve it, not because we earned it, but because we're still here. I haven't read the news in days. Not because I'm afraid, but because, for once, I have something more important to follow. The delivery room was quiet. No panic. No shouting, just the steady rhythm of machines, the soft voice of the nurse, and Dane's hand wrapped around mine. "Just one more breath," someone said. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I was too focused, too full of something heavier than pain. And then she was here, not with a dramatic wail, but with a sharp inhale, like the world surprised her as much as she surprised us. They placed her on my chest. She was warm, damp, real. I looked down and saw eyes I'd never seen before, but somehow knew. "Hi," I whispered. Dane said nothing. He just leaned in, forehead to mine, our daughter between us. The nurse asked, "Do you have a name?" I nodded. "Harper." We'd chosen it weeks ago, not from a baby book, but from a poem my mother used to love. Harper means one who plays music, and somehow, in that moment, it felt like a song had finally finished playing, one I'd been humming through every heartbreak, every loss, every fight to survive. I didn't feel heroic. I just felt whole. Our apartment isn't big. The floor creaks in places. The washing machine makes a clicking sound we can't fix. But it's ours. Mornings begin with Harper's soft whimper, not crying, just her way of saying, "I'm here." Dane always gets up first. He hums while warming her bottle, sometimes off-key, sometimes in tune. I watch from the doorway, still surprised by how gentle he can be with something so small. We no longer talk about board meetings or headlines or lawsuits, just laundry, groceries, pediatrician appointments. Sometimes, after Harper falls asleep, we sit on the balcony in silence. Not awkward, not tired, just still. Dane rests his hand on my knee, like he's anchoring us both to this new life. He's different now, softer. Yes, but also more present. He doesn't reach for his phone when there's a pause in conversation. He reaches for me. And me? I've stopped checking comments, stopped waiting for the world to move on. It already has. And so have we. Once, I thought healing would look like fireworks, but it looks more like this. Warm bottles, shared glances, laughter over burnt toast, a baby's breath on my neck as I rock her at 2 a.m. No audience, no applause, just the three of us. Quiet, real. Enough. We called it the quiet door, not a shelter, not a hotline, a place where women walked in, not to be saved, but to sit down, be seen, and start again. It started in the back room of a community library, just me and a few donated folding chairs. Now, there's a waiting list. Not because we turn people away, but because word travels fast when someone says, "They listened, they didn't judge." We offer counseling, job referrals, sometimes just hot tea and a place to exhale. I don't share my full story often, but when a girl looks at me with eyes that say, "You'll hate me if I tell you," I lean in and whisper, "Try me." I keep a photo of Harper on my desk, not to prove I'm a mother, but to remind myself of what was once impossible. One woman, maybe 19, told me, "You make me think I could still have a future." That day, I went home and cried, not from sadness, but from knowing that everything I once broke for might now be helping someone else rebuild. I used to believe survival was the end of the story. Now I know. It's just where the good part begins. Harper's birthday was simple, just the way we wanted. A backyard strung with lights, cupcakes instead of cake, folding chairs, paper plates, and the sound of little feet on grass. People brought books instead of toys, something we'd asked for. We wanted Harper to grow up with stories, not things. Halfway through the afternoon, someone tapped a fork to a glass. "Speech," they called. I laughed. Not because I had one prepared, but because, how do you sum up this year? Still, I stood, held my daughter, cleared my throat. When Harper was born, I began. I didn't know who I was yet. I glanced at Dane. He smiled quietly. I wasn't sure I could be a mother, or be seen as more than my mistakes. I thought I had to fight the world every day just to deserve peace. I looked around at the faces. Some I knew, some I didn't. All of them real. But healing isn't loud, I said. It's small. It's folding laundry with someone who stays. It's being called by your name, not your past. Harper squirmed in my arms. I kissed her forehead. This little girl doesn't care about headlines or rumors. She just needs me to show up. I paused. So that's what I'm doing. Every day. For her. And, finally, for me. Applause followed. Gentle, not forced. I sat down with my daughter in my lap and knew this was what winning looked like. Quiet. Steady. Hours. The house was quiet. Not silent. Harper breathed softly against my shoulder, her small fingers clutching the edge of her blanket, but the kind of quiet that feels earned. The lamp beside us cast a soft golden pool across the nursery floor. Outside, the wind tapped gently against the windows. Winter was near, but inside, everything was warm. I opened the book. Her favorite one. The one with animals and questions she liked to interrupt. Tonight, she didn't interrupt. She just watched me. I read slowly, letting the rhythm of my voice wrap around us both. Once upon a time. I stopped, smiled. Not because the story was done, but because I was finally part of one that didn't need to be rewritten. Just lived. Harper yawned. I kissed her cheek, turned the page, and kept reading. Not just to her, but to the version of me who never thought she'd be here. This morning the train was late. People sighed, looked at their phones, checked watches. I just sat. Harper had spilled juice on my shirt. Dane had kissed me goodbye with toothpaste still on his lip, and I had forgotten to grab lunch. Ordinary chaos. Across from me sat a young woman, maybe 20, shoulders hunched, phone gripped tight. She looked like she hadn't slept, like she was holding something in she didn't have words for. I recognized it, the look of someone who thinks they've already ruined their life. She glanced up, and our eyes met. I gave her the smallest nod, not pity, not intrusion, just, "I've been there. You're not alone." She didn't smile, but she relaxed. A stop later she stood, but as the doors opened, she turned back and said, "Thank you." I didn't ask what for. Here's what I've learned. You don't need a platform to make a difference. You just need presence. To stay. To see. Sometimes, the greatest thing you can do for someone is not fix them, but believe they're worth fixing themselves. And maybe that's what love really is. Not saving each other, but sitting beside each other until the pain isn't so loud.